On tonight's Wales at 6, we're live in Caerphilly, where Labour has lost an election for the first time in 100 years.
Come on, Lindsay!
An historic win for Plaid Cymru is a shattering blow for Labour, who came third behind a surging reform vote. Tonight, the First Minister tells me she can turn things around and Labour will win the election in just 6 months' time.
I understand that there's work to do and I have every intention of leading us to a win in May.
And it's a watershed day too for Welsh Rugby, with the WRU revealing either the Ospreys or the Scarlets will be axed.
I'm in West Wales, where those two rival teams are now fighting for their lives. Who might win and what will it mean for the game?
Hello, good evening from a very wet Caerphilly. Labour's 100-year dominance of politics in the town has ended after Plaid Cymru swept to victory in yesterday's by-election. Party leader Rhys Iorwerth says the result is a reset moment as he eyes up the First Minister's seat at next year's Senedd election. Turning to the result in more detail, Plaid comfortably held off the challenge of Reform UK with the highest ever turnout in this seat for a devolved election. It'll be a bitter blow for Eluned Morgan and Labour, who ended up a distant third, even though the party did hold the seat before the death of Hefin David, which triggered the contest. Tonight we'll have all the reaction to this historic result, where it leaves the parties and, crucially, what it all means for the future of those Senedd elections just over 6 months away. But first, here's our reporter Megan Boot with the day's event as Plaid Cymru celebrates.
Sunrise over Caerphilly, heralding a new day and a new dawn in Welsh politics. Celebrations for Plaid at the steps of the castle this morning. Just listen to this.
I have received messages of goodwill, not only from all corners of Wales, but from Scotland. Can you believe France? Can you believe Australia, Spain and Canada?
For more than 100 years, these walls have been Labour's, but not anymore. And the ripple of this result goes far beyond this community. You've wanted this for so long. You've gone for this seat many, many times. Why do you think it cut through now?
I think people have become very disillusioned with the Labour Party in this area. Cardiff doesn't talk to London and Cardiff doesn't talk to their own local constituencies any longer, so it seems, and their own divisive politics has brought an end to their 100-year rule here, and I think people are now seeing through them, and they want change and they want positive change, and we have offered positive change.
It's the highest ever turnout in a Senedd election in Caerphilly, with nearly half of those voting for Plaid.
How will you replicate that success here in May?
The result we've had here in Caerphilly has come because of a clear vision, a brilliant candidate, but also it means working hard, on the doorsteps, taking our message directly to people. Now we have an election next year where every single part of Wales matters. I will be with my colleagues in every part of Wales, persuading them in the way that we have in Caerphilly that there is another way of doing things. We've had Labour running Wales for over 100 years. People have clocked that it doesn't have to be like that.
It's a future Amy's been waiting for years.
I've always voted for them, even though I know this has always been a Labour stronghold. Just out of principle, I've always voted for them, and now they've finally won. It does feel good, I'm not going to lie.
Do you think there is an appetite for real change then?
It needs to be changed.
Do you think that's Plaid Cymru?
Not at the moment, no.
But this election has shown change. Reform transformed their vote from barely 500 people in 2021 to more than 12,000 today.
Do you think Reform in Wales next year could be in government?
I think so. I think, it's actually probably done a good thing for Reform, because now maybe if there was a slight bit of complacency, and I'm not saying there was, but if there was, it's actually going to kick them into gear.
The political colours over Caerphilly have changed. Labour's voters crumbled. The Conservative and Lib Dems didn't even make enough to get back their deposits. But how permanent it is, well, their performance over the next few months will play a major part.
And Megan's with me now. You've spent the day here in the town. Is this a protest vote against Labour, or is something bigger going on, do you think?
John, I think it's actually something bigger going on, and the reason for that, a story and a statistics. Let me give you the story first, because take a listen to this. I spoke to a man, he's Tory, voted Tory, and he was delighted Plaid Cymru had won, because he was saying it's bringing change, and change is what they want. And in terms of statistics, you know, we saw in the results today, overnight, for Lib Dems, Tories and Labour combined, it's 14.55% of the share. That's really small. In the general election last year, although Labour did win then, their vote was still coming down. So do I think it's a protest? I think it's more than that. Again, people have said, well, actually, reply, can we just give in the vote, tactical vote? But speaking to people who've done that, it's because they're really unhappy with Labour. And not just stuff that's happened in the last few months, but for years. I don't think this is a case of people, you know, sort of giving a warning shot, if you like, over the bows. I think this is actually people jumping ship from Labour.
OK. Megan Boot for the moment, thanks very much indeed. So as we've just been hearing, all kinds of problems for Labour and the First Minister, and very little time to turn things around. There are just 6 months until the election here in Wales. Earlier, I caught up with Eluned Morgan at the Senedd in Cardiff. You said you're captain of the ship. The ship hit an iceberg last night. Are you going to go down with this ship?
I'm certainly not intending to go down with the ship. My plan is to lead Labour into the next election with a brand new, invigorated team of candidates with fresh ideas, look into the future and making sure we're responding to the kinds of issues that people were talking to us about on the streets of Caerphilly.
That sounds like a plan. If you had 5 years, you've got 6 months.
So these things can turn. It's a very volatile time politically, but we will be reminding people that Welsh Labour has the experience to lead, has the ideas to lead, and we need to make sure that at a time of real instability that we're looking to the future.
You must have spoken to the Prime Minister. What did you say to him?
I spoke to Keir Starmer today. He recognised that this was a very difficult result for Labour. He's committed to working with us. I made it clear that I expected more to be delivered from the UK government. I'll always put my country before the party.
Where does the blame lie? How much of this is about Labour's national performance, the Prime Minister's performance, and how much is it about Welsh Labour being in power 25 years in Cardiff?
I think we've all got to take our share of responsibility. I certainly will shoulder my share. But what's important now is that we look to the future, that we work out how we get out of this situation we're in.
How do you do that?
Well, let's not forget that the electoral system will be entirely different. So
well,
people
on that system, you could be wiped out.
People will not be voting tactically in the Senedd election. There are opportunities for people to vote for the party they truly want to lead. And also, I think it's important for us to make sure that we're offering something fresh and new, and that's certainly what we'll be working up in the next few months.
Can you tell us what they are?
Well, obviously they're all being worked up at the moment. There's a huge amount of discussion going on around the country with our stakeholders, with our partners, and we're asking people to feed in ideas. And the key thing is, though, is that we respond to what the public want. They told us when I first came into power as leader, I did a listening exercise and I've responded directly to those. They told me to fill potholes. This week we've reported we filled 130,000 potholes since they gave me that instruction. This week we've seen waiting lists come down. That was something else they made it clear they wanted to see.
Well, I suppose the next big hole in the road for you is getting your budget through. How are you going to do that?
Well, we've never had a majority in the Senedd. We've always had to negotiate. This is something that is par for the course here in the Senedd. We are asking everybody to come to the table. We're willing to discuss with everybody, and we hope people will take us up on that offer, because there's a lot at stake here. What we don't want to see is mass redundancies, cleaners being sacked, teachers being sacked, bin men being sacked. That's what is facing us if we can't get our budget through. We will be responsible. We hope other parties will be responsible as well.
Have you considered the possibility that you could be the leader that leads Welsh Labour out of power?
I'm very serious about the situation. I understand that there's work to do, and I have every intention of leading us to a win in May.
First Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, we'll have more from Caerphilly in a moment, but first to another major story breaking this afternoon, and the Welsh Rugby Union have revealed they'll be cutting a regional team in a bombshell announcement. The union say they'll fund one team in the east, another in Cardiff, and a third in the west, meaning the future of the Ospreys and Scarlets are in doubt. Well, our sports reporter Matt Southcomb's outside the Principality Stadium for us this evening. Matt, it doesn't get bigger than this. What more do we know?
Well, John, it's huge for Welsh rugby. After months and weeks of meetings, consultations, and in some cases infighting, today players, fans and staff finally received some clarity from the Welsh Rugby Union. The last 8 weeks have been full of speculation and chat, but today the WRU finally revealed its strategy. As soon as possible, there will be a reduction from 4 professional clubs in Wales to 3. It represents the most seismic change in Welsh rugby in over 20 years. In August, the Welsh Rugby Union said that radical change was needed to save the game from its steady decline. Today, after furious backlash from players and supporters, they were forced to retreat from that position. But only slightly. 4 teams will become 3 as soon as possible. A move spearheaded by Director of Rugby, Dave Reddin.
The advantage of 3 over 2 is you've got more playing spots in the competition for top Welsh talent. But I think the level of investment we're putting into those 3 teams is really significant when we get started. So in the first year, the salary budgets would be sort of 6.5 million, rising to 7.5 the year after. Significant investment into backroom staff, so it's really competitive with the sort of levels that we see in the English Prem.
1 team will be based in the capital city of Cardiff, 1 in East Wales, and 1 in West Wales. It appears to put the Scarlets of Llanelli and the Ospreys in a straight shootout for the licence down west. The only place where there are 2 teams vying for 1 licence here is in the west, so surely the Ospreys and the Scarlets are now being asked to sort that out between themselves.
Well, look, one solution to that issue could be that the Ospreys and Scarlets do have conversations and, as you put it, sort it out themselves. We certainly wouldn't rule that out. But all I'm saying is that there are 3 licences on offer today. There are 3 groups of owners outside of the Welsh Rugby Union. And, you know, we hope to reach a consensual solution.
But as uncertainty reigns, fans have no guarantees they'll have a team to support in the coming years.
Disappointing. We've always said from the outset, with our conversation with our supporters, that 4 is the ideal model. We don't want to lose any teams. It's down to the lack of direction and the poor mismanagement of the WRU that we're in this situation.
And a cloud will continue to linger over those whose livelihoods are at risk.
I think it's in everybody's interest, whether you're the URC, whether you're our club owners at the moment, to get there as quickly as possible, because this instability and uncertainty is difficult for everybody.
So today a strategy has been unveiled. There have been some answers, but there remains almost as many questions. Well, in the last few minutes, the Scarlets have issued a statement, and their board says that they are confident the Scarlets will continue to play a central role in the future of Welsh rugby, playing out of Parc y Scarlets, and they vow to engage with the process that will now ensue in a professional manner. Now, I do want to talk you through some of the figures involved here. The 3 teams moving forward will be equally funded. That's significant because there was a chance that might not be the case. Starting off, each team will receive £6.4 million per year, and that will rise to £7.8 million, something which Dave Reddin says is comparable with the figures on offer in England. But there are still many unanswered questions. What we don't know as we stand here tonight is if the Welsh Rugby Union has permission from the league to even do this. The WRU has an obligation to the URC to provide 4 clubs to the competition. I asked Chair Richard Collier-Keywood directly if they'd received permission, but the answer is still unclear. What we do know, though, is that change is coming for Welsh Rugby, and it is going to be enormous change. Right now, livelihoods are on the line tonight, but what we don't know is when that change will be upon us.
OK, Matt Southcombe at the Principality Stadium. Thanks very much indeed. Now, both Llanelli and Swansea have very strong rugby traditions. And as you can imagine, this news has gone down very badly in those communities. Our West Wales reporter, Lewis Rhys-Jones, is outside Parc y Scarlets for us this evening. Lewis, a nightmare scenario for fans.
I think it's fair to say it is a nightmare scenario, John, indeed, because after all, the last thing both the Scarlets and the Ospreys would have wanted is to be pitted up against each other, but that seems to be the situation that they're in tonight. After all, as we have already heard, there will only be one West Wales team within the next couple of years. Now, the Ospreys have the advantage of arguing that, yes, they serve an area with a larger population, but there is much upheaval around the fact that they are expected to leave the Swansea.com stadium and relocate to St Helens. On the flip side, you've got the Scarlets here in Llanelli saying they've got a much established home behind me in Parc y Scarlets. So when these kinds of changes were first announced within the WRU, there was speculation of a possible merger between both teams, but as you can imagine, that went down like a lead balloon among the fans. And speaking of the fans, earlier on we spoke to Gareth Story from the Scarlets Supporters Club.
I think that it shows that the WRU have at least listened, that their 2-team optimal solution wasn't very optimal, and actually the move to 3 could be beneficial for all involved, but it does lack a lot of detail in terms of what the way from 4 to 3 is. I think they've caused a lot of stress, a lot of frustration amongst players, staff and supporters alike for not just the recent months of the last couple of months of this consultation, but actually through several years now as the game in rugby has declined in Wales across the 4 professional clubs and the national team.
Local politician Kevin Campbell is calling on the WRU to reconsider their decision, citing that it would be culturally and economically damaging to the area. But the fans tonight will be thinking about all the great wins over the years and how that legacy could be lost.
OK, Lewis Rhys-Jones in Llanelli, thanks very much indeed. Back here in Caerphilly, it's still raining, but Plaid Cymru are celebrating an historic breakthrough. Senior members within Welsh Labour are pondering this evening how the party responds to this crushing defeat. But it'll have practical implications too, as it'll make it harder for Labour, the government here, to pass a budget at the Senedd, as Hamish Ausgerry explains.
As the count got underway, the numbers on Welsh Labour clipboards couldn't really have been much worse. By 2 a.m, their fears confirmed.
In difficult circumstances, we did our best to run a positive campaign, one that put the concerns of the people of Caerphilly and the Valleys at its heart.
The Welsh Labour candidate, a personal friend of the late Heaven David, tried to remain positive, but even bigger challenges now lie ahead.
Some of the things that we've done over the last decade or more in the face of austerity, in the face of having those budget cuts, the public services we protected, we haven't got that message out there.
For weeks now, Caerphilly and its castle have been at the centre of the UK's political landscape. But now, with all the votes counted, attention turns from here to Cardiff Bay, where the by-election result could have a huge impact, not just on the political landscape ahead of next year's Senedd election, but on budgets for public services. And here's why. Up until the by-election was triggered, Welsh Labour had exactly half of the total number of Senedd members, just shy of a majority. And that's meant every time they've had to pass a budget or another piece of legislation, they've had to rely on the support of at least one other opposition Senedd member. You might remember last year when the sole Lib Dem MS, Jane Dodds, agreed to support the Welsh Government and therefore they could pass their budget. But after Labour's loss in Caerphilly last night, that's no longer going to be enough. And Eluned Morgan, the First Minister's options are limited to either the support of Plaid Cymru or, incredibly, a deal with the Welsh Conservatives. And the support of either of those two parties will not be easy to get. As a former First Minister, Carwyn Jones knows these kinds of negotiations better than most. But perhaps now we could see a first for devolution, a deal once deemed unthinkable. Is it now not more likely that the deal comes with the Welsh Conservatives? Almost unbelievably to some, because Plaid Cymru feel that why should we support Labour ahead of next year's election?
I think Plaid Cymru need to show that they can be responsible. I think that's important, and they don't have to support the budget. They can abstain if they want to. Of course they can. So I think there are dangers for them if they're seen as being too obstructive. Of course there are dangers for us if we're not seen as being flexible enough. Of course there are. That's what you have to balance in politics. But I hope we get to a position where the budget does pass. Frankly, if someone had said to me when I was First Minister, there's a possibility of a deal with the Tories, I would have been quite surprised, as would they have been, to be quite honest. But let's wait and see.
Can you remember a time when the situation's been worse for Welsh Labour?
Difficult to imagine it, to be honest with you. We can't just say, this is a blip, don't have to worry about it. There's work to do to convince people to come back to us. We have a coherent programme, both in Cardiff and in London, and I'm confident that Eluned and Keir can deliver that.
Many polls ahead of the by-election had put Reform and Plaid Cymru neck and neck in Caerphilly. In the end, Lindsay Whittle won by a clear margin. But what, if anything, does that tell us about next year?
For Labour, it's a much more difficult kind of lesson, right? They're facing negative headlines in Wales, negative headlines kind of UK-wide. We know that voters are leaving them across England and Wales. In Wales, the task for them will be to convince voters to stick with them, even if voters are kind of more scared of a kind of surging reform than they are of losing out or losing a Labour government.
How last night translates into next year's Senedd election is really anyone's guess. 7 months is an eternity in politics. But the parties vying for power know by-elections build momentum, both good and bad.
And Hamish is at the Senedd for us now. Hamish, where on earth do Labour go next after such a disappointing result for them?
Well, it's certainly been a bruising few weeks for Labour, John. Ever since the by-election was triggered, opposition parties sensed that chance to attack Labour's record, and ultimately that's left Labour with just 11% of the vote, and that leaves Labour in peril of a historically bad result next May because, of course, we have a new electoral system coming in, and experts believe that parties would need about 12 or 13% in a constituency to get just one seat, and of course that's a concern for next year. However, of course, by-elections are rarely a chance to get the full national picture, and Labour voices today have talked a lot about particular local factors in Caerphilly, including, of course, tactical voting by those on the left trying to keep Reform UK out of the seat. But actually, that could be part of a big problem for Labour next year, because if, for example, the main takeaway for the majority of voters is that next year's Senedd election is a straight two-horse race between Plaid Cymru and Reform UK, that could lead to a real squeeze on all the other parties' vote share, including Labour's. Ultimately, this could just be a moment in the electoral cycle, but if it changes the political narrative, it could have long-reaching consequences.
Hamish Ashkerry at the Senedd, thanks very much indeed. And if you'd like more on this story, then sign up for our Substack newsletter and it will be delivered direct to your inbox. Now, if you like a good read, then you can now subscribe to the ITV Cymru Wales newsletter. Just scan the QR code on your screen now, where you can sign up on Substack. You only have to do it once, and after that, we'll automatically email you our weekly newsletter, where you can get more analysis and insight from our reporters on the biggest stories around Wales. It's completely free to sign up, and you can read it on your phone and tablet too. Just scan the QR code to sign up, or if you're already on Substack, just search ITV Wales. Well worth doing. Now, a senior member of Reform UK says the war is still to be won after their second place showing here. Former Conservative MP for Wrexham, Sarah Atherton, who's defected to Nigel Farage's Reform Party, insists it represents a significant moment. She's been speaking to our reporter Joanne Gallagher, who's in Wrexham for us this evening. Joanne, how has the result been seen in Reform circles?
Well, we may be 130 miles away from Caerphilly here in Wrexham, John, but this by-election result and Reform not sealing that deal is something that lots of people are talking about. Why is that? Well, North East Wales, the industrial heartlands and the coastal areas in North West Wales are exactly the type of areas that Nigel Farage's party will be trying to target ahead of May's Senedd election. There's clearly a lot of disappointment across Wales. Nigel Farage said that he felt the thousands of votes his party had managed to get in Caerphilly would be enough to see him secure that win. It wasn't to be. Now, that's to take nothing away from Plaid Cymru. They clearly garnered support, and Labour, obviously, some of their supporters lending some of their votes to Plaid to get them past the line. But there's a lot of soul searching amongst the Reform Party. As you say, I spent this morning speaking to Sarah Atherton, the former Conservative Wrexham MP. She's now a member of Reform. She wants to stand for them in the Senedd election. She's not too disappointed with the result.
I wouldn't say anything went wrong at all. They worked really hard. We had a good campaign out there. And as I say, from a cold start, people don't really know what Reform have to offer yet and what they can do. They're untried and untested. So they did exceedingly well. So I don't think they went wrong at all, and we've got all to fight for going forward. We may have lost the battle, but the war is there still to be won.
And what impact do you think the conviction of former Welsh leader Nathan Gill for bribery by a Russian spy had on the party?
Well, it's something that a lot of people have talked about, John. Whether that's resonated for those going into the polling booth, we really don't know. But the Reform candidate, Llyr Powell, certainly tried to distance himself from Nathan Gill.
OK. Joanne Gallagher in Wrexham, thanks very much indeed. Well, that was Wales at 6 on a momentous day here in Caerphilly, where after hundreds of years, their grip on this heartland constituency has well and truly slipped. The walls of this fortress town have been breached by Plaid Cymru. The question tonight is whether this defeat will turn into a rout for Welsh Labour at the next Welsh general election. And that is it. The weather is up next, but from all the teams across the country, thanks for watching.
Midday Mayan temples, followed by sunny afternoons on the sand. TUI sponsors ITV Cymru Wales weather.
Hello there, very good evening to you. The weekend is just around the corner. The weather is looking very seasonal, is probably the best way of putting it. It is going to be very unsettled with a mixture of blustery showers, hail, thunder and lightning with some dry spells and possibly a few breaks in the cloud, allowing a little bit of sunshine. Saturday certainly looking the brighter day of the weekend, but temperatures throughout are going to feel very, very cold. And don't forget the clock change as we head into the early hours of Sunday morning. In the meantime, then, I think that largely sums up the situation out there at the moment. We've got a keen northerly breeze blowing, scattered squally showers in, particularly through western areas overnight tonight. Inland areas could escape with something a little bit drier, but wherever you are, we are certainly going to feel the chill. General lows of around 5 or 6, but colder still with that wind, although it should be frost-free, and that's just because of the movement of the air. So as we wake then to the start of the weekend, it is going to feel bitterly cold throughout. Again, some breaks in the cloud allowing some sunshine, but a scattering of those showers I mentioned, which could be heavy at times. Just be careful on the roads. And again, rumbles of thunder, hail and possibly some lightning strikes thrown in too. But you can see the temperatures already down on today's values, struggling to get much above 8 or 9 degrees for some, and then factor in that wind, feeling even cooler still. Cold under clear skies through Saturday night, and as we wake to Sunday, a gloomy start to the day, grey skies and a more organised band of rain that'll start to work its way eastwards. So again, not particularly pleasant conditions, lots of low cloud, misty, murky conditions, but if anything, this actually brings temperatures up to something just that little bit milder, but unsettled conditions well into next week. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors ITV Cymru Wales weather.